What's up, guys? Another Turkey Talks with George Wade and guest speaker Luke Hutchinson, class of 2019. He goes to the University of Tennessee. Unfortunately, Asa is sick today, so Luke is covering. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Luke.
All right, I graduated in 2019. I'm a forestry and wildlife management major at University of Tennessee. I'm a junior right now, and excited to talk to George Wade about some turkeys.
Yeah, so what really got you going into the forestry and habitat and everything like that for your major? What inspired you to do that, Luke?
I really like hunting and being outdoors, and I knew I couldn't sit at an office in a desk job all day. I wanted to be outside. So I figured forestry and wildlife management or conservation would be the way to go.
I gotcha. So what are some things that you think, since you were at Woodberry, what are some things you think could possibly help the Woodberry habitat and surrounding forest around campus?
So I think increasing turkey habitat would be a big thing. They really like increasing the native grasses and cover for nesting and poults. I feel like that might be kind of hard because the good areas that are close to like the hardwood stands that they like to roost in, it's all used for cattle and grazing. So that cover really wouldn't be there as much. But that would be one big thing, increasing the native grass species and stuff. Hardwood oak hickory stands are good. Pine hardwood stands are good. They like to they want cover too in the woods, but they need enough to where they can hide but also still run away from predators, because their main way to get away from predators is to fly. But if they don't have enough area to run away and pick up speed before they fly, then the predators will just get them before they fly away. So that's another thing, increasing the habitat in the woods and close to the woods so they have nesting area to where the roosting is. I think you could contact like a local game warden to that area, and they could help kind of guide you all in the right direction. Or if UVA has like a wildlife program, you can talk to them and see if they want to do a research project or something. You could get that ball rolling now and then eventually get them to do that.
I gotcha.
You can plant certain crops or whatever that they'd want to eat. That's another good thing.
Gotcha. What are some things that y'all do since you're majoring in forestry? What are some things y'all do to rebuild the turkey, or like any kind of habitat, really, not just turkeys particularly, just kind of any wildlife?
So big thing would be making sure wherever area you're in, you want to make sure the like plant vegetation species are all native to that area, because the animals that are native to that area rely on those. Sometimes, like for example, they have elk they're re-establishing in Tennessee, and the population in Tennessee is about like 500 right now. But there's this plant called autumn olive, and they use it to like restore the soil and erosion from logging and coal mining. But even though autumn olive isn't native, that's still elk's like number one food source that they use at the WMAs. So I mean, that's one example of where an invasive kind of helps native species, like wildlife species, but you usually want to stick to native plant species and stuff like that and try to get it to where it was years ago before it was neglected.
Yeah, I got you. So at Woodberry, we deal with a lot of invasive species that have kind of taken over the forest, and I mean it's kind of grown up to where it's so thick that any kind of wildlife can't move around through the forest, which is really why when we planned this project, we planned on turkey hunting for 2 weeks straight and then moving towards the turkey habitat restoration. But after, a week and a half of hunting and looking at the habitat, we realized that the forest is just too overgrown with invasive species. What are some things that you can do to help decrease the amount of invasive species from spreading throughout the forest?
Definitely active hands-on management. You have to be active in there, because if you just neglect it, if they're invasives in there, they'll just spread like crazy. So you got to kind of identify which species there are, and then go from there. Once you know what species there are, each one has a different type of method to get rid of them. Like some spraying them would be good. Others, you got to just pull them all out. So once you figure out which species there are, then you go from there and kind of figure out what the best way to remove them is.
I got you. What is? So you were talking about kind of hands-on, removing those invasive species. What is your take on using pesticides and other chemicals, spraying them, or whatever, to remove those invasive species? You think that's a good thing? Or is that a pro or a con to a habitat?
I guess it depends. Like if you're near water, you don't probably want to use pesticides, because then it gets in the water and it hurt the aquatic life in there. But if you do your research too on, say you're spraying for tree of heaven, usually you cut the tree and then you spray on the part where you cut it.
Yeah.
And it'll soak in all that stuff. You figure out what that chemical is kills and what natives it also affects, and you're careful with it, I think there's no problem with it. You just got to be careful with it, make sure it doesn't get in the water, stuff like that. Gotcha.
So, talking about invasive species, and you've kind of covered it mostly, but what is one thing you can do, just one simple thing you can do to stop the spread of invasive species from, just taking over a forest?
Honestly, again, I think it'd be just active hands-on management. If you're not active in the woods where you're trying to restore, then there's really no point, because you can't just go to it and fix it and then expect it to just stay the same. Burning is a good option too. You can do prescribed burns, which is good. Make sure you have fire breaks and stuff. Like a road would be good. That's a good fire break. Make sure it doesn't spread. So you just got to be careful when you do that. But burning is a really good option too.
So I remember not too long ago you sent me a video of y'all doing a controlled burn. Tell us a little bit about the controlled burn or prescribed burn. What are the things y'all do ahead of time to kind of set that in place?
So usually it's more of day of or the day before. You got to figure out what the weather is going to be like.
Okay.
Wind direction, moisture, humidity. There's too much moisture in the air, too humid, then that stuff you're trying to burn won't burn very well. But if it's a low humidity, that stuff you're burning will burn a lot better. There's a lot of different techniques too you can use, using head fires, backing fires, stuff like that to kind of control the fire. It's kind of there's a whole science behind it. It's pretty cool.
I got you. So with the way our forest is now, even with Mr. Afrani, which you took Mr. Afrani, I'm pretty sure, he always tells us that Woodberry's forest the best thing possibly to restore the habitat of all the wildlife would be do a controlled burn. Do you think that's possible to do one at Woodberry, or do you think that it's a little too much, especially with all the buildings and the roads and everything like that?
No, it's definitely possible. You probably want, I think Shenandoah National Forest is pretty close. So, you could see that there's a Shenandoah National Forest, hotshot crew, and maybe they would come out and help. Cherokee National Forest borders Tennessee and North Carolina, and their hotshot crew came up and helped us and taught the prescribed burn class to us. Then we went out and actually did the practice of a prescribed burn. So you can see if they have a hotshot crew, Shenandoah National Forest, and it's definitely doable. At least the woods are far enough away from the building, so that wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
you definitely want to have some equipment, maybe like a bulldozer or something to make fire lines around like the football field and the other athletic areas and buildings if you're worried about it getting there. But I don't think it would be a problem if you have people there that know what they're doing and can help make sure it's safely done.
So you think if you have a fire break, I mean, not even going all the way towards like football fields and stuff, but if you broke it up into smaller sections or the forest into smaller sections and just had fire breaks just continuous in different spots, you think that would be the easiest thing if you just did it in sections instead of doing one forest at a time or whatnot?
Oh, yeah. I think if you probably told the school, whoever's in charge of approving that, if you want to work in smaller sections at a time, they would definitely probably be more on board with that. If you say, we want to burn all the woods around campus, like that'd be a big fire, easy to get away from, and it could start burning other people's property, which is a big problem.
Yeah, well, yeah, I wish we could do controlled burn. It would definitely be way more beneficial than what we are doing now, but in the idea of what we are doing with removing, or the hands-on removing invasive species, stuff like that, in general, how important do you think it is as students to keep moving along with the habitat restoration, like the hands-on? How important do you think it is for students in the future to keep moving along with the hands-on habitat restoration and the removing of invasive species?
I think it'd be very important, depending on like what students and teachers want. I feel like teachers year-round, they would like to see other wildlife besides annoying geese or dogs running around. If they could see some more deer or turkeys, I feel like turkeys are a really cool animal to be able to just watch. They're really cool, so teachers might be able to. It'd be cool to see turkeys walking around campus in the summertime when there aren't a lot of students.
Yeah,
you can see other animals. If I was also thinking maybe to incentivize like students to keep up with the management, you could be like, once we get an established population here, we could do a lottery where like 3 or 4 tags drawn a year just on campus, and you just have a little lottery or whatever. And students could donate like $10 for one ticket, and then all that money could go towards the management and stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one of our big plans with this project, and moving on through the future is students through the Rod and Gun Club. Instead of just doing habitat like management and pulling, invasive species and weeds and whatnot, instead of that being counted as like demerit work or something, we were trying to do it as service. Instead of demerit work, having it do as like service hours. You could go out for however long, do that, help with the habitat restoration, and that would count as service hours, because I feel like, if somebody just wants to work off the merits, they're not going to really put as much effort into it. But if you're working for service hours, somebody's going to put more effort into that. So that's what we're kind of planning on is,
that's what I was going to say too. If it's demerit work, they're probably not going to care. They're just going to be out there pulling whatever they pull.
Yeah.
If you have people who actually care about turkeys, or, the Rod and Gun Club, they actually care about helping with conservation and stuff, they might be more interested and likely to inspect what they're pulling before they pull it. Like, they could pull out an oak tree, which are like, turkeys like to eat hard mast, which are like acorns and hickory nuts and stuff like that. They could pull out an oak seedling when they think it's just some invasive thing. So if you have people who actually care, they might try harder,
Yeah, that's what we were getting to. But yeah, so I mean, that's really all I've got for the turkey habitat restoration. But I know you did a lot of turkey hunting this year up at school. You want to share any details about that and how that was going, or what?
Yeah. So I went probably 6 or 7 times this year. It's hard to make time with school, but the last 2 times I finally narrowed down on this bird, and I was hunting until probably sunrise until noon before I got tired of talking to him. But the last day I went out, there's these 2 fields, and there's a road that ran on the north side of the 2 fields, and this little valley that was in between them. And he was across the valley, and turkeys don't usually like to cross valleys like that super quickly. So I was calling back and forth with him for 2 hours. And the field's only probably 200 yards away from me on the other side of me. So I was on the field on the right side and he was on the left. And he was just hung up over there. And then eventually this hen popped out of nowhere, like 10 yards in front of me. Just walking back and forth, clucking for like 5 minutes straight, did not shut up. Finally, she was quiet, heard the gobble, and she went over there. And then after probably 30 minutes, I started calling back to the gobbler. Gobbler started going nuts again. And he was just hung up over there, wouldn't get out of his field. So I went up to that road on the north side and started walking across super slow, trying to act like a hen walking. And made a rookie mistake. Instead of calling right before I came around the corner to the field to try to locate where the bird was, I just decided to stick my head around the corner, and he was 10 yards off the road staring at me. Just ran into the woods.
I gotcha. So
they're hard hunting up in the mountains in North Cumberland, WMA, which is, it borders Kentucky and Cumberland County, and that's where that elk restoration project is. So you got to see some elk too, which is pretty cool. They used to be native to Tennessee, because then their habitat eventually got ruined because the Native Americans used to burn and keep it grasslands and stuff like that in forests, which elk love to eat. But now it's just all old growth forests. So they're trying to reestablish them here now, which is kind of cool to think they're also native to Tennessee, not just out west.
I gotcha. So when you were hunting, you said there was a little bit of woods, and then there would be open fields as well.
Mm-hmm.
So most of the time would you go early, try to get them off the roost, or would you kind of go in later? What was it early morning hunts or what?
Yeah, I always went early morning. In the beginning of the season, I was hunting more in the woods, but I found out I don't know, I just didn't have as much luck getting them to respond in the woods.
Yeah.
So I decided to go to this other place, and it's all surrounded by woods, and there's that little valley in between, which isn't that big, but they're two big food plots, probably like 5 acres each, or 3 to 5 acres each probably, and which had good areas for them to breed and eat and stuff, because they like to eat grasshoppers and stuff like that. So when there's tall grass that's at least like knee high, there's a lot of insects and grasshoppers and stuff like that in there that they'll like to eat, especially poults as babies, because that's like 90% of their diet.
Yeah.
Or like until they're probably 3 or 4 months old is insects. So if they have that tall grass, like when you walk through the tall grass in the summertime, you see all these insects, grasshoppers jumping up and flying away. So they were in there. They like the fields like that because there's those insects, and they can mate and strut and see all of them. But then right next to the fields, it's all like hardwood forest. So they can go in there, and it's close to roosting area. And there was a little creek down there.
Yeah.
Bottom of the little holler, and there's a plant called rosebay rhododendron, which is I'm not sure if it has berries or what, but it's really good cover for them. And that was everywhere. So I found a little turkey habitat mecca at the end of the season, but I just didn't spend enough time there to eventually kill them.
I got you. That's talking about what it looked like out there. As you're describing it, it kind of sounds like some of the same things that we have at Woodberry. I mean, we've got the hard mass and we've got the good cover for them. It's just unfortunately so thick, and then we have those. We've got all those pastures and then we got the grass, the taller grass, and then we have all the open fields, and we've got the river. And as you know, what was that?
Keep going. I was going to say, I think you can kind of get maybe 2 pastures to start with, cattle pastures that are near one of your sites that you're trying to restore, and that's close to the woods. Burn it once a spring, like once a year, maybe for 2 years, and see if you can get natives, if they're not native grasses in those fields. Try to get native, because it'll happen naturally if you burn, and don't burn too hot, don't burn hot enough. It's in the right area. Eventually, after probably 2 or 3 years, you'll get some native grasses coming back. And then also you could clear out, since I was in the middle of the woods, but there were 2 field plots, maybe you could try to get the Rod and Gun Club to try to cut down at maybe half an acre inside of the woods and try to make a little food plot in there. And turkeys would love that because they could roost around there and go down there and still have the woods to hide in. Then they would have that little food plot to go eat and mate and stuff like that in the woods.
Yeah. That's you know the campus just as well as I do, but you know where the dove fields were and down that area. That's where we spent a lot of our time. We found a big, probably about 3 acres of pine trees. It was actually more of an open area than most of the forest. And then we had probably 100 yards from us or so, we had like a little opening of grasslands where they hadn't started planting yet and or cutting any of that down yet to start planting. So we thought that might be a good area, but unfortunately it was not. We did not have very much luck at hunting this year or for our distinction, but hey, it's called hunting, not killing for a reason.
Exactly. If you get the habitat though there, the birds will come. That's the key that I've learned too in school is like if there's no, say your target species turkey, if there's no turkeys, it's probably because the habitat's not there. It's not because they're not around, just the habitat's not there. If you can get the habitat how the turkeys want it, turkeys will come. So
yeah, I definitely know though it's not that we don't have turkeys. I mean, there's been several sightings of turkeys like right when you come out of the guard or the gates of Woodberry to the left of you, there's both to the left and right. There's big fields, open fields, and I've seen turkeys there. Mr. Afrani has seen turkeys there, and I mean, like you were saying, I think our habitat just needs a lot of work done to it to help restore and rebuild that for the turkeys.
Yeah. Back in like the early 1900s, there's little to no turkeys left. There used to be like 10 million, they estimated North America, and they got down to a couple thousand. And then in like the 30s or 40s, they started to realize like we need to do something to get these turkeys back. And they started off trying to farm raise them, but they all didn't have that like wild natural instinct, so they just stand there and get eaten.
Yeah.
And then we started to focus on more of the habitat and stuff like that. And now it's crazy how many there are. I think now they estimate like 7 or 8 million now in North America, which is still pretty good, especially with how much like industrialization there is compared to the early 1900s. So turkeys can respond quick if you can get their habitat what's ideal for them.
Gotcha. Well, I guess that's all we have for today. I appreciate you joining me, Luke, and thank you for taking Ace's spot. And gave us a lot of good intel, and thank you.
Of course, no problem. Good luck.
Thank you.